A lot of influencers do lie to you. A lot of influencers will say they're natural when they're not, and they will do so because they're trying to sell you something. They will say they've achieved these incredible results naturally by doing their program, taking these supplements, whatever it may be, when in reality, those things probably didn't give them the amazing results. The performance-enhancing drugs probably contributed more than any of them. Sadly, people will lie about their natural status because it means they're going to sell things to you and they're going to make more money from you. All of your favourite Instagram models and influencers are on steroids. Or are they? Interesting question to ponder today. And I say that because when I do a lot of videos, obviously most of the videos I do cover women because my audience are primarily women, about 91%. And I actually get a lot of comments, more often from men on those videos, saying that whichever influencer I am covering is on steroids, or they only look a certain way because they're on steroids, or because they've only achieved this result because they're on steroids, etc, etc. And two of the most common people I actually get those comments about are both GainsByBrains and also LeanBeefPatty. Both of them obviously have absolutely incredible physiques, but it kind of got me pondering. I don't really cover Natty or Nots and haven't covered Natty or Nots for a long time, but I know a lot of people do, and a lot of those videos are kind of getting quite popular again recently. I figured, you know what, let's talk about it and probably give you an answer you probably weren't expecting. So when I say natty or not, what I essentially mean is, are they on steroids or are they on performance enhancing drugs or not? So if you're on performance enhancing drugs, you're not natty. If you're not on performance enhancing drugs, you are natty. What you deem to be a performance enhancing drug, again, kind of depends on the person. Some people say that if it's a banned substance in drug testing, it means you're not natty. Again, that's kind of a wide scope because I think too much caffeine will get you banned in certain federations depending on the sport, etc, etc. Again, how you define a PD is up to you, but what we're going to do is we're going to go through these individuals and I'm going to talk to you about why I think they might be enhanced or why they might not be enhanced and tell you exactly why. So if we look at GainsByBrains, for example, a lot of people often say when I cover her that she's achieved her amazing results and gained X amount of muscle and lost X amount of fat because she's on performance enhancing drugs. There are a few kind of things you can consider when looking at performance enhancing drugs. Is there's obviously the idea of like androgen receptors. They often say when you are on drugs, there are certain areas that might respond more than if you weren't, so maybe your rear delts, traps and upper chest. Again, how much validity is behind this, I'm uncertain, but it's what a lot of people say, especially when you're taking oral steroids, because obviously you can take oral or injectable. They typically say oral steroids are a lot more cosmetic. You're more likely to look like you're on enhancements taking orals than if you were taking injectables. With women, it's more common that maybe orals might be used. So a lot of women may use Anavar. Granted, I believe personally, again, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I do believe that if you are going to use Anavar, you should still use the testosterone base. That's a conversation for another day. But a lot of people might use a very low dose of testosterone and then use Anavar on top of that. And Anavar is an oral steroid that's often referred to actually as the woman's steroid. It's very commonly used by women, especially in things like bikini competitions and whatnot. And Anavar, again, because it's oral, can result in a lot of cosmetic changes where you maybe do see your traps get a bit bigger, your upper chest kind of blow up a bit, and your rear delts look a bit more capped. GainsByBrains has none of those. Again, I'm not saying they're like foolproof ways of indicating whether this person is or isn't on something, but realistically, if they are a contributing factor or maybe an indication, doesn't tick any of those boxes in my eyes. Another thing is a certain like kind of look of hardness and maybe like, it almost seems like your skin is tighter and you just look like you're pumped all the time. GainsByBrains visually, to me, looks very natural. And again, can you accurately say what looks natural and what doesn't? No. Categorically no. To be honest, I think it's actually a bit of a controversial opinion. I think it's really hard to tell who's natural unless they are so far beyond comprehension where they're just absolute monsters, because again, you can achieve some pretty incredible results naturally, regardless of gender. When it comes to natty or not, I do kind of argue who cares? And I mean that in the sense that if they don't claim natural, they don't speak anything of it. Whether they are or aren't natural, that does not determine how much you could achieve, because their genetics are going to be very different to your genetics. Just because somebody achieved an amazing result naturally does not mean it's possible for you to achieve that naturally. Flip it around, just because somebody's on enhancements and you don't believe looks very good doesn't mean that you couldn't arguably look better without them. Everyone's going to respond differently, whether you're on enhancements or you're natural. Our genetic potential and the amount we can achieve as individuals is going to vary person to person. Therefore, from that sense, it's actually really hard to determine, what you've achieved is naturally attainable, because Again, it may be naturally attainable for them, but might not be for you, and that should not be used as an indicator of what is or isn't attainable with or without enhancements. And the other thing is, although GainsByBrains is certainly a strong individual, she's not stupid strong. I'm not saying that's necessarily an indicator of whether someone's on enhancements or not. I'd like to expect if you're on enhancements, you're probably getting some strength benefit. She hasn't gained any mass amount of strength in a short period of time, and she's not stupidly strong. She's very strong, but she's not like an absolute genetic phenom who's dominating the industry. Again, does that necessarily contribute to whether she's natural or not? Not really, but it could be a considering factor, because realistically you can only get so strong with or without enhancements. I know people who are natural who are benching weights you will never comprehend. I also know people who are very enhanced that will bench weights that you probably could have benched a year ago. Again, it really depends, but I wouldn't say anything about GainsByBrains visually or from like a strength perspective screams enhancements to me. For that, I would be personally pretty shocked if she wasn't on enhancements, and that's not a bad thing, not a good thing. It's just an observation that I do think what she has achieved, she has probably done so without enhancements, and I don't think she's selling you a lie. Very quickly, I've got to throw it out there. Linked down below, you know the drill. You've got the link to the group coaching where you can pay less than your Netflix subscription per month to follow a program either at home or at the gym that I have created for the group. You've also got the link to download one of the TFNL workout guides, which come with so much information about nutrition, mental health, training, all sorts, as well as many months of programming for you to follow. And you've also got the link to apply to one-to-one coaching with myself, Ryder, or Beth, where we can coach you on a one-to-one basis online to help you towards your goals. So if any of those tickle your pickle, have a gander down below in the description and let me know. LeanBeefPatty is a little bit leaner than GainsByBrains, and arguably has probably a bit more muscle mass than GainsByBrains. She's a bit more in the kind of bodybuilding realm. She doesn't necessarily train for bodybuilding, isn't a bodybuilder, but she's a bit more known in that bodybuilding realm than GainsByBrains might be. You might look at her and say, oh, her traps are looking pretty developed, her rear delts are kind of poppy a bit. Are these necessarily indicators of naturally enhanced? I'd say no. Then there's a rumour that goes around, oftentimes I bring up LeanBeefPatty of, oh, once upon a time on Reddit she said that she was taking Anavar or that she wasn't natural. I challenge anybody to find me that post, because I've looked for it and I've not found it. She's even spoken about that post and said, I've never said that. Everyone says that she said this, but no one's ever actually seen it. So it's almost like a game of Chinese whispers, and that must dictate whether she's natural or not, because somebody told a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend that on Reddit once upon a time 3 years ago she said this because a friend told them. Another thing you can consider when looking at potential natural or enhanced is conditioning. Is she stupidly conditioned? Does she have really tight, dry-looking skin? No, not really. Granted, you can get very conditioned as a natural, but you're probably going to be able to take it to that next level if you do have enhancements. And her conditioning is bloody impressive, fantastic, but I wouldn't say it's wildly unachievable for her potentially. Again, for you, I don't know, but for her, I'd say it's a very fair level of conditioning. A couple more big things to consider. Does her strength or physique fluctuate at all? Not really, to us. Does she go through periods where she's suddenly a lot bigger, a lot smaller, a lot bigger, a lot smaller? Is she a lot stronger, a lot weaker, a lot stronger, a lot weaker? No, not really, because ultimately when you're on enhancements, you're probably cycling, which means you maybe blast and cruise, or you cycle on and off, where you'll take more, and then you'll either come off completely, or you'll go down to like hormone replacement therapy. So you're kind of up, then down, up, and then down. It's almost like you're taking 5 steps forward and maybe a few steps back. And again, that's what I mean by, is she getting bigger than smaller, stronger than weaker, which would kind of potentially coincide with cycling? No. Has she made any drastic physique changes in short periods of time? Also no. Does she look wildly different how she used to look? No, I'd say across the years of her being socially active, her progression has been pretty consistent actually, and there haven't been any wild periods of amazing growth. I think her gains have been pretty consistent because she's been pretty consistent. And that's the one thing that separates a lot of people from actually achieving their goals and not achieving their goals, is the fact that they're probably not as consistent as they should be. Consistency alongside intensity and other things of that nature are going to be so important. You also can look from maybe like physical things. Like, are there any points of injection? Do you see any injection sites here? No, not really, because when you're looking at injecting, you're probably looking at maybe the delts or the glutes. Again, you can't really see her glutes here, but you can see her delts. Is that a spot there maybe? Probably not. Are there any injection points here? Again, no. So again, that could be a consideration. The last thing to actually note is when you look at certain images, you're like, wow, she looks so much bigger in this picture or so much bigger in this picture, because the biggest trick that the internet can play on you is lighting and angles. You could make a very natural person look pretty bloody enhanced if you have good lighting, you're relatively lean, and you got the angles sorted. Tick those boxes and you're going to look like another person. And as influencers and social media creators, they're probably pretty good at lighting and angles because it's part of their job. Just because somebody looks a certain way in a picture doesn't mean they look that way in person. They may look very enhanced online, but then you meet them in person and be like, wow, you look fairly normal. And that's something I've come into quite a lot, where I've seen people that online look absolutely incredible. Then I see them in person the next day or maybe a week later, and you're like, you still look good, but there's definitely a big difference. Online you look enhanced, in person you look pretty natural. That's not a good or a bad thing, it's just an observation that light angles, posing, lighting, leanness, all these things do contribute to the look you might be able to present online. And again, remember, social media is a highlight reel. People typically only post what they want you to see and the best image that they have. If you take 100 photos, you're probably going to post the best one. You're not going to post the worst one. So again, like GainsByBrains, I would be bloody shocked if lean beef patty was not natural in my opinion. Again, what I'm saying and these kind of points of potential indication are simply my opinion. No, I cannot accurately gauge. Even with drug testing and monitoring hormones, although you can get a better idea, you still can't accurately say for sure. The only person who will know if this individual is enhanced or not will be this individual. I can give a somewhat potentially slightly educated guess and say, like I said, both of these individuals, I would be shocked if they weren't natural. A lot of influencers do lie to you. A lot of influencers will say they're natural when they're not, and they will do so because they're trying to sell you something. They will say they've achieved these incredible results naturally by doing their program, taking these supplements, whatever it may be, when in reality, those things probably didn't give them the amazing results. The performance enhancing drugs probably contributed more than any of them. And although with drugs or not, you still need to put the work in, they definitely give you a bit of an advantage. And like I said, sadly, people will lie about their natural status because it means they're going to sell things to you and they're going to make more money from you. And essentially, lying in the fitness industry is a great means of making money. In my opinion, I don't think that applies to either of these individuals. But again, this is simply my opinion, and that's all it is. But if you want to see more of these videos, let me know, because they're actually kind of fun to do. And if you have any names you want me to look at, drop them down in the comment section or message them to me on Instagram and I'll add them to the list. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my potentially somewhat controversial opinion on this topic. And thank you for tolerating the video.